The response phase is the most evident of the four parts of emergency management. While it includes taking action during an emergency, like evacuating people during a flood, it can also include actions taken immediately before or after an emergency.
The term response refers to activities, programs, and plans designed to address the short-term effects of an emergency or imminent threat. Response activities can include organizing an evacuation, setting up a reception center, sandbagging or quarantining individuals with a contagious illness.
Emergencies are usually handled by first responders, but it's not always up to them. Sometimes the community needs to get involved in the response effort by providing support.
You're able to bring together your RCMP, your wildlife officers, your community government employees who have roles in responding to the emergency, health and social services, all of the agencies in the community who may be involved in responding to the event that's happening.
The Community Emergency Response Committee, or CERC, is the coordinating group when an emergency requires a multi-agency response. Typically, the committee is made up of the mayor or chief, the SAO or band manager, counselors, community policing officials, fire officials, public health representatives, and so on.
The CERC is mostly responsible for protecting the community. That includes the health, safety, and well-being of people, property, the environment, infrastructure and essential services, the local economy, and maintaining public confidence in the community's ability to manage the emergency. Each member of the CERC has individual responsibilities to fulfill as a member of the group. The Emergency Management Coordinator and the heads of the various member agencies of the CERC must ensure each member is aware of their responsibility. They must also ensure these individuals have the necessary education, training, and skill level to be able to fulfill these responsibilities, and that designated emergency equipment and facilities are in good condition.
The Community Emergency Plan is activated in two ways: by a member of the Community Emergency Response Committee taking actions towards responding to an emergency, or by formally declaring a state of local emergency. Depending on the emergency situation, your CERC may activate one or more specific hazard plans. If an emergency event occurs to which there is no corresponding hazard-specific plan, the Community Emergency Response Committee would follow the All Hazards Plan. Managing an emergency requires an area with which to do so and an effective operating system. And the operating system that ensures effective communication is the Incident Command System.
When there is an emergency, the first people to arrive on the scene to deal with an incident are often referred to as the first responders. They may need to organize people from different groups or agencies such as the RCMP, the fire department, and medical teams. To help organize a response, they may use the Incident Command System, or ICS. During an emergency, working together is easier and more effective if everyone uses the same system. The Incident Command System is an emergency response system used, for example, by forest firefighters here in the Northwest Territories. All of these people from different agencies need to be able to start working together immediately as an effective team and under one system of command. The system they use is the Incident Command System. In order to deal with an emergency, it is a big challenge to activate an immediate response and coordinate everything you suddenly need. That's why it's important to have a system already in place and tested to organize people, equipment, resources, and expertise. Whether the emergency response involves just 2 or 3 people, 30 people, or 300 people. The Incident Command System uses these principles to create an effective response system. People need to know who's in charge. Simple language without a lot of code words or specialized terminology is the easiest for everyone to understand. People need to know exactly what needs to be done so they can do it. They need to know the goal and have a plan to reach it. When there's an emergency, an incident command post will be set up. This is called the on-site center and is usually located at or near the site of an emergency. The incident command post is run by the incident commander. This is the person coordinating the operation or response at the site of the emergency. While it's the first responders who actually respond to the incident, they need support and often additional resources from the entire community. The Community Emergency Response Committee is responsible for fulfilling the support functions within the Incident Command System.
The Incident Command System is a way to organize the common activities undertaken by the Community Emergency Response Committee and offers a common language among partners. There are typically 5 activities that can be undertaken in a response. Command activities include assessing the situation, setting priorities, and guiding the overall response to the incident. Operations activities concentrate more on carrying out the action plans. Planning activities are those activities designed to collect and evaluate information on the incident and create action plans. Logistics activities consist of coordinating equipment, supplies, facilities, services, and support that are required by the incident. Finance and administration activities help keep track of costs associated with managing and responding to the emergency. These 5 activities are relevant to any incident of any size. In a small incident, they may be managed by one person, the incident commander. In a larger incident, these areas can be set up as separate sections and made larger or smaller based on the needs of the particular incident.
The Incident Command System may sound military, but it's not. It is just a tool to organize an emergency response. It works so well that it's now used all around the world, even for organizing other things like large events and gatherings. When a disaster strikes, the Incident Command System is a proven and effective response system. It is flexible to the requirements of the incident and enables an integrated and coordinated response which allows responders to act quickly and efficiently.
In the Northwest Territories, emergencies are managed from the Emergency Operations Center.
The specific location of your Community Emergency Operations Center, or CEOC, is identified in your Community Emergency Plan. The plan also identifies who notifies all of the members of the committee when there is an emergency and who will activate the Operations Center.
The NWT Emergency Response Plan requires the SAO, or the band manager or chief, to notify the Regional Superintendent of MACA in case of any emergency.
These emergency operations centers exist at all levels of government.
We don't have any power. The emergency power generators are only on.
During the response phase, the CERC is responsible for activating, setting up, and staffing the CEOC. It is very important to note that the CERC works out of a site in the community called the CEOC, while the responders work out of the emergency site itself. These two groups operate separately in these separate locations. This means that the members of the CERC don't go at all to the emergency site. Communications take place through a designated contact person. The responders at the emergency site or incident command post are the ones who direct the operations, not the CERC. The purpose of the Emergency Operations Center is to coordinate different agencies, provide policy direction and strategic oversight, issue public information and warnings, coordinate activities with regional and/or territorial EOCs,
Emergency Operations Center,
as well as gather information, establish priorities, and make decisions for managing the overall response and recovery operations. An Emergency Operations Center is a physical facility or building which possesses the necessary characteristics, equipment, and space to manage an emergency 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is the location where the CERC comes together to manage an emergency. In your community emergency plan, it is important to have both a primary and at least one alternate CEOC site listed. The site chosen must be able to function effectively, operate on a 24/7 basis, and be self-sufficient, accessible, and secure. Buildings such as the council office, the rec center, or the community center may be designated as a CEOC. Staff should be able to fulfill their functions and have all the necessary emergency and office equipment. This will require computers, copiers, fax, log-keeping supplies, workstations, filing cabinets, stationery, pens, and other office equipment and supplies.
Any room in your building can become an instant EOC. All you need is a locked cabinet where you can put your supplies and get to them in the event of an emergency. As you can see in this one, we have satellite phone, some radios that we can hook up, some telephones over there with dedicated lines that are not published, as well as all of the binders for other agencies. Here we have writing instruments and everything else to be covered off in case we do have an emergency and we need to get to them quickly.
The EOC is also the central location where information is collected, evaluated, and displayed. This means it needs to have display boards, clocks, maps, procedural and resource manuals, as well as signage. Since the EOC must be able to function 24/7 and be self-sufficient, it needs to have an emergency generator, first aid supplies, flashlights and batteries, fuel, transportation, food, water, and toiletries. It should have bathroom facilities, a rest area, and a place where food can be arranged. During an emergency, it is very important to provide clear, correct, and consistent information, not just to the members of your community, but to all of the different people who need to know what's going on. This can help to keep people safe from harm and also to instill confidence in the public. If your community decides to declare a state of local emergency, you also need to know how and by whom the public and others are going to be notified.
And now to Aklavik, where severe flooding could cause a partial evacuation.
There are many different ways to communicate with your community or the general public during a response, such as telephone, text messaging, posting bulletins, local media such as radio, newspapers, and television, door-to-door notification, emergency broadcast, and the internet. Public communications activities during an emergency response should be coordinated through the involved levels of government. In summary, it is important that your community is well prepared for the response phase of an emergency. Being aware of the resources you have available to deal with emergencies, such as people, information, equipment, and facilities, will help you to know what you have to work with. Being a member of the Community Emergency Response Committee is a very important role, and the better you know it, the more you'll be able to help protect your community during an emergency.
Our number one concern is human life and property. So if you're not prepared for an emergency, things could happen that you don't want to happen.